A night of strangers, the rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Skyline Lounge like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. Riley Thompson stood at the marble bar, gripping her wineglass with both hands, wishing she could disappear into the burgundy liquid. The networking event her boss had insisted she attend was in full swing around her. But she felt invisible among the designer suits and confident laughter. At 26, Riley had spent 3 years climbing from intern to junior coordinator at Brennan Creative, a small advertising firm that barely registered on Chicago's competitive marketing scene. Tonight was supposed to be her chance to make connections, to prove she belonged in rooms like this. Instead, she had spent the past hour nursing the same glass of wine and checking her phone every 5 minutes. Her black dress, borrowed from Natalie, her roommate and best friend, suddenly felt too tight. The heels pinched her toes. Everything about this evening reminded Riley she was playing dress-up in a world that was not her own. When lightning strikes, the energy in the room shifted suddenly, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Riley glanced toward the entrance and saw him. Even from across the crowded space, he commanded attention. Tall, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his fingers through it. Wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but it was not his looks or expensive clothing that made Riley stare. It was the expression on his face, raw and unguarded, the look of someone barely holding himself together. He walked straight to the bar, 3 seats down from Riley, and ordered whiskey. His voice was rough, like gravel wrapped in silk. The bartender moved with unusual speed, pouring an expensive scotch that Riley recognized from bottles locked behind glass. She should have looked away, should have minded her own business. But something about his posture, the way his shoulders curved inward, as if protecting a wound, kept her attention fixed on him. Her phone buzzed. Natalie's name lit up the screen. Without thinking, Riley answered with their usual greeting. "Hey there, sweetie." The reaction was immediate and unexpected. The man beside her inhaled sharply, his head whipping toward her with such intensity that Riley nearly dropped her phone. "Jessica." His voice cracked on the name, hope and pain tangled together. "Baby, is that really you?" The moment everything changed, Riley froze. She should have corrected him immediately, should have explained that he had made a mistake. But his eyes stopped her, dark and desperate, looking at her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. "I tried calling you for weeks," he continued, words tumbling out in a rush. "After the board meeting, after everything fell apart, I thought I lost you forever." Natalie's voice chirped from the phone. "Riley, you there? Did you but dial me?" Riley quickly ended the call, her heart pounding. This man, this stranger, thought she was someone named Jessica. Someone he clearly loved with an intensity that made Riley's chest ache. "I am here," she heard herself say softly, the words escaping before logic could stop them. Relief washed over his face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," he whispered, reaching for her hand. His touch was gentle, reverent. "Thank you for giving me another chance to explain." Into the storm, the next hour passed like a fever dream. Cameron Blake, as she learned when he showed his keycard to access the private elevator, owned half of Chicago's commercial real estate, including the Skyline Lounge. His technology company, Blake Technologies, had recently made headlines for a controversial merger. Now Riley sat in his private suite 30 floors above the city, listening as he poured out his heart to someone he thought she was. "The merger with Hammond Industries," Cameron said, pacing before the rain-streaked windows. "Jessica's father built that company from nothing. 35 years of his life? But it was dying, bleeding money every quarter. Without intervention, it would have collapsed within 18 months. He ran both hands through his hair, the gesture making him look younger, more vulnerable. The board wanted a hostile takeover. Buy it cheap, strip the valuable assets, liquidate the rest. Standard corporate practice. His voice turned bitter. But I knew what that company meant to Jessica, what her father's legacy meant to her family. So I fought for a different solution. Riley found herself leaning forward, genuinely invested in his story despite the growing weight of guilt in her stomach. I spent months negotiating a merger that would preserve jobs. Keep the Hammond name. Let David stay on as senior advisor. The board threatened to replace me if I did not deliver total control. Cameron's laugh was harsh and hollow. In the end, I signed the papers. One chose my position, my company, over her trust. And when Jessica looked at me across that conference table, when I saw the betrayal in her eyes, I knew I had destroyed the only thing that ever really mattered. The almost kiss the suite was quiet except for the rain and the distant hum of the city. Cameron had stopped pacing and now stood close enough that Riley could see the individual lines of exhaustion around his eyes. Could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. "You always knew when to let me talk and when to make me stop," he said softly, his gaze intense on her face. "You would tell me that some problems could not be solved, only survived. That strength was not about never falling apart, but about getting back up afterward." Riley's breath caught. Whoever Jessica was, she had known this man deeply, had understood the parts of him he kept hidden from the world. "Tell me," Riley said quietly, needing to understand what drove someone to such depths of regret. "If you could go back, would you make a different choice?" Cameron's expression crumbled. Every single day, I asked myself that question. Would I sacrifice my career for love? Would I let the company burn to keep you? He shook his head slowly. The honest answer terrifies me because I do not know. I was raised to believe that business and emotion had to stay separate, that a CEO who let feelings guide major decisions was weak. Maybe, Riley ventured carefully, the real weakness is believing you have to choose it all. Maybe the strongest choice is refusing to sacrifice one for the other, finding a third path even when everyone says it is impossible. Something shifted in Cameron's expression. He stepped closer, his hand lifting to cup her cheek with a gentleness that made her heart stutter. "How do you always know exactly what I need to hear?" he murmured, the moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Cameron's gaze dropped to her lips, and Riley knew with absolute certainty that he was about to kiss her. Every instinct screamed at her to pull away, to confess the truth before this went any further. But then his phone buzzed loudly, shattering the spell. Cameron blinked, seeming to register their proximity for the first time. He stepped back quickly, running a hand over his face. "I should not have," he began, then stopped. "You should go." "I am sorry. I am not thinking clearly." The confession that never came. Riley gathered her purse with shaking hands. This had gone too far. She had to tell him the truth, had to explain that she was not Jessica, that everything about tonight had been a terrible, accidental deception. "Cameron," she started, but he was not looking at her anymore. His attention had fixed on his phone screen, his expression closing off. "My driver will take you home," he said, his voice suddenly formal and distant. "Thank you for coming, for listening. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but having this conversation, it means everything." The dismissal was clear. Riley found herself ushered into a private elevator, down to a waiting car and halfway home, before she fully processed what had happened. Her phone buzzed constantly. Natalie had called 6 more times and sent a dozen increasingly frantic texts. Riley stared at the messages without really seeing them, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. She had lied to a stranger. Let him pour out his deepest regrets and vulnerabilities to someone he thought was the woman he loved. The guilt sat in her stomach like a stone. But beneath the guilt was something else. Something she did not want to examine too closely. The way Cameron had looked at her, even believing she was someone else, had made Riley feel seen in a way she never had before. The raw honesty in his voice, the vulnerability he had shown, it had touched something deep inside her. "You are an idiot," she whispered to herself as the car pulled up to her modest apartment building. A complete and total idiot. Because even knowing this was built on a foundation of mistaken identity and accidental deception, even knowing she would probably never see Cameron Blake again, Riley could not shake the feeling that something profound had shifted in her world tonight. She had no idea how right she was, or how quickly that shift would turn her entire life upside down. The rain continued to fall as Riley climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, where Natalie was waiting with questions Riley had no idea how to answer. Behind her, The city lights blurred through the wet windows of the departing car, and somewhere in a tower of glass and steel, a man she barely knew nursed his whiskey and thought about a woman who was not her. Monday morning, Riley thought as she turned her key in the lock, would be a fresh start. She would put this strange, emotionally charged evening behind her and return to her normal, uncomplicated life. She had never been more wrong about anything in her entire life. The announcement Monday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. Riley stood in front of her closet, trying to select an outfit that would help her forget the weekend's surreal encounter. She settled on a navy blazer in simple white blouse, professional armor against the memories that kept surfacing unbidden. "You are still thinking about him," Natalie called from the kitchen. Where she was making coffee with the determination of someone preparing for battle, Riley emerged from her bedroom, attempting to look composed. "I am thinking about how I accidentally let a stranger believe I was his ex-girlfriend, and then listened to his entire life story without correcting him. That is called being a terrible person, Nat." "That is called being human," Natalie countered, handing Riley a travel mug. "You saw someone in pain and could not walk away. That is who you are. Though next time, maybe lead with the truth." "There will not be a next time," Riley said firmly. "Chicago has 3 million people. The odds of ever seeing Cameron Blake again are basically zero." The universe, as it turned out, had a wicked sense of humor. When worlds collide, Brennan, creative, occupied the 5th floor of a modest building in the Loop, sandwiched between a dental office and a tax preparation service. Riley had worked there for 3 years, knew every coffee stain on the carpet and every temperamental quirk of the ancient copy machine. But when she stepped off the elevator that morning, something felt different. The reception area, usually cluttered with sample products and outdated magazines, had been cleared. The walls, previously decorated with faded motivational posters, now displayed sleek corporate branding she did not recognize. Her colleague James practically sprinted across the office. "Did you check your email? Did you see the announcement?" "What announcement?" Riley's stomach began to sink. "We have been acquired. Some massive tech company bought us over the weekend. The CEO is coming this morning to introduce himself and outline the new structure." The coffee in Riley's hand suddenly felt very heavy. "What company?" "Blake Technologies," James said, eyes bright with excitement. "Do you know what this means? Real budgets, actual resources, health insurance that covers more than band-aids and prayers." The world tilted sideways. Riley gripped the edge of a desk, trying to process what she was hearing. Blake Technologies. Cameron's company? The company he had chosen over Jessica, over love, over everything that mattered. "The meeting starts in 10 minutes, James continued, oblivious to Riley's distress. "Conference room. Attendance is mandatory." Faced a facete when 3 employees crammed into a conference room designed for 12. Riley positioned herself in the back corner, partially hidden behind a filing cabinet. Praying for invisibility or spontaneous teleportation. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Acquisitions could mean opportunity or devastation, and no one knew which way the winds would blow. The door opened. Riley's boss, Martin Brennan, entered first, looking simultaneously relieved and anxious. Behind him came a woman in an expensive suit, carrying a tablet and wearing the efficient expression of someone who made problems disappear. And then Cameron walked in. He looked different in daylight. More controlled, the vulnerability she had witnessed completely erased. His suit was impeccable, his expression professionally pleasant. Every inch the powerful CEO the business magazines wrote about. This was not the broken man who had confessed his regrets in a rain-soaked suite. This was someone else entirely. His gaze swept the room in a practiced assessment. And when his eyes landed on Riley, time stopped. She watched recognition flash across his face, followed by confusion, then something darker. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. But then it was back, smooth and impenetrable. "Good morning," Cameron said, his voice carrying easily through the cramped space. "I am Cameron Blake, CEO of Blake Technologies. As of this morning, Brennan Creative is now part of our corporate family. Riley could not breathe, could not think, could only stand frozen as the man she had deceived outlined plans for restructuring new opportunities and expanded client portfolios. "We believe in the talent here," Cameron continued, making eye contact with various employees. His gaze skipped over Riley as if she did not exist. "Which is why we are investing in this team rather than simply absorbing your accounts into our existing structure. However, there will be changes. New protocols, new expectations, new standards of excellence." The woman beside him, whose nameplate identified her as Patricia Vance, Director of Operations, began distributing folders. "Inside you will find your new contracts, benefits packages, and reporting structures. Please review carefully. We will schedule individual meetings this week to discuss your specific roles going forward." Riley's folder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "One more thing," Cameron said as the meeting was wrapping up. His tone remained perfectly professional, but something in it made Riley's pulse spike. "I will need to speak with Riley Thompson. Immediately after this meeting, my office. 3rd floor." Every head in the room turned to look at her. Riley felt her face burning as whispers erupted around her. James shot her a confused look that clearly asked what she had done to get the new CEO's attention on day one. Behind closed doors, the 3rd floor of the building had been completely transformed. What had been storage space and unused offices now housed a sleek executive suite that looked like it had been airlifted from a Fortune 500 headquarters. Glass walls, modern furniture, technology that probably cost more than Riley's car. Cameron's assistant, polished woman named Grace, directed Riley to wait in a smaller conference room. The minutes stretched endlessly as Riley rehearsed and discarded a dozen different explanations for her behavior. When Cameron finally entered, he closed the door with controlled precision. The click of the lock sounded impossibly loud. "Well," he said quietly, leaning against the door, "this is unexpected." Riley forced herself to meet his eyes. "I can explain, can you?" His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. "Because from where I stand, you deliberately deceived me. Let me pour my heart out to a stranger. Made me believe for one night that the woman I loved had come back." "It was not like that," Riley protested. But even to her own ears, the words sounded weak. Cameron moved closer, and she noticed dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he had slept as poorly as she had. "Then what was it like, Riley Thompson? Please enlighten me. Tell me how you ended up in that bar, in that suite, listening to my most private thoughts while pretending to be someone else." "I was not pretending," Riley said, finding her spine. "You assumed. I called my friend, you heard me say something affectionate, and you jumped to conclusions. I tried to correct you, but you were so devastated, so broken, and I just could not add to your pain. So you decided to compound it instead." Cameron's laugh was bitter. "Do you have any idea what it felt like Sunday morning? Waking up, remembering our conversation, feeling hope for the first time in weeks. I called Jessica's number 17 times, ready to actually fight for us. And then she answered." Riley's heart plummeted. "What did she say?" "She said she had been in London all weekend at her father's estate. No rainy bar, no mysterious reunion. She thought I had lost my mind." He turned away, presenting his back to her, which, apparently, I had. "Lost it so completely that I confused a stranger for the woman I loved." "The real Jessica. I am sorry," Riley whispered, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "I never intended to hurt you. I just saw someone suffering and reacted without thinking through the consequences." "Noble," Cameron said flatly. "Naive, reckless, and ultimately cruel, but noble." The words stung, but Riley accepted them. She had earned his anger. "Here is what is going to happen," Cameron continued, turning back to face her. His expression was carved from ice. "You will continue working here because firing you now would raise questions I do not want to answer. But you will stay away from me. No casual encounters, no elevator conversations, no attempting to explain or apologize further. We will interact only when professionally necessary, and those interactions will be brief and documented." "I understand," Riley said quietly. "Do you?" Cameron stepped closer, close enough that she could see the muscle twitching in his jaw. because I am not sure you understand what you have done. For 3 hours Friday night, I believed in second chances. I believed that maybe love could survive impossible choices, that forgiveness was possible. And then reality crashed in, and it was worse than before because I had tasted hope. Riley felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. She did not deserve the comfort of crying. "One more thing," Cameron said, his voice dropping even lower. "If I find out you have discussed that night with anyone, colleagues, friends, anyone, I will make sure you never work in marketing again. Not in Chicago, not anywhere. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Riley managed. Cameron nodded once, sharply. "Then get out of my sight." Unwelcome complications, Riley fled to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall until her breathing normalized. She had expected anger, had prepared for it. But the cold contempt in Cameron's voice had been worse than any shouting. When she finally emerged, James was waiting by her desk with curiosity written all over his face. "So," he prompted, "what did the big boss want?" "Just reviewing my contract," Riley lied smoothly, making sure I understood the new reporting structure. "For half an hour." "It is a complicated structure," Riley said, booting up her computer with false confidence. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual work to do." But focusing proved impossible. Every time Riley tried to concentrate on the campaign brief in front of her, her mind drifted back to Cameron's face, to the hurt and betrayal she had put there. Around 2 in the afternoon, a commotion near the elevators drew everyone's attention. Patricia Vance had returned, but she was not alone. Beside her stood a woman who could have stepped out of a fashion magazine, all golden hair and perfect features. Wearing a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than Riley's entire wardrobe. "Everyone," Patricia announced, "I would like to introduce Jessica Hammond. She will be consulting with us on the Hammond Industries account, helping to facilitate the transition and merger communications." The name hit Riley like a physical blow. Jessica. The real Jessica. Cameron's ex-girlfriend, the woman Riley had accidentally impersonated, was standing 15 feet away, looking every bit as polished and perfect as Riley had imagined. Jessica's gaze swept the office with the practiced assessment of someone used to evaluating and dismissing people in seconds. When her eyes landed on Riley, they paused. Narrowed slightly. "You," Jessica said, walking directly toward Riley's desk. "You look familiar. Have we met?" Riley's mouth went dry. "I do not think so. I am Riley Thompson, junior coordinator." Jessica tilted her head, studying Riley with an intensity that felt invasive. "Strange. I am usually very good with faces. Are you sure we have not crossed paths? Perhaps at the Skyline Lounge? I know the owner quite well." The emphasis on the last sentence was deliberate, a territorial marking. Riley forced herself to maintain eye contact. "Rarely go there," Riley said truthfully. "Friday was my first time." "Friday?" Jessica repeated slowly. "How interesting. That is the same night Cameron had his little breakdown, calling me incessantly about second chances and forgiveness. You would not know anything about that, would you?" The temperature in the office seemed to drop 10 degrees. Other employees had stopped working, sensing drama even if they could not hear the specifics. "I am afraid I do not know what you are talking about," Riley said. Keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will, Jessica smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Of course not." "Well, I suppose we will be working together quite a bit in the coming weeks." "I do hope you are good at following instructions, Riley. I have very high standards." As Jessica walked away, Riley's hands trembled so badly she had to clasp them under her desk. This was not over. Whatever game was being played, Riley had just become a piece on the board whether she wanted to be or not. After-hours revelation by 6 in the evening. Most of the office had cleared out. Riley was finishing up a project when her phone buzzed with an internal message. Not an email. A direct text from an unknown number.
Parking garage.
Level B, 5 minutes. Come alone. Riley's first instinct was to delete it. But something about the message's urgency made her reconsider. Against her better judgment, she gathered her things and headed for the elevator. Level B of the parking garage was dimly lit and mostly empty. Riley's footsteps echoed as she walked deeper into the concrete space. She was beginning to think this was a mistake when a figure emerged from behind a support column. Cameron, he looked exhausted, his tie loosened, jacket discarded somewhere. This was not the icy CEO from their morning encounter. This was someone closer to the broken man from Friday night. "You should not have come," he said, but made no move to leave. "You told me to," Riley pointed out. "I know. That was stupid." Cameron ran both hands through his hair. "Everything about this situation is stupid. You being here, Jessica being here, me texting you like some paranoid conspiracy theorist. What do you want, Cameron?" He looked at her for a long moment, and Riley saw a war playing out behind his eyes. Finally, he spoke. "Jessica knows something happened Friday night. I do not know how, but she knows. And she is not here just for the merger. She is here because of you." Riley's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "David Hammond, her father, he is a strategic genius. Ruthless, calculating, always 3 moves ahead. The merger was his idea, not mine. He orchestrated the whole thing, knowing it would create tension between Jessica and me. And now, having his daughter placed here as a consultant right after acquisition?" Cameron shook his head. "That is not coincidence. You think he knows about Friday? I think he knows something. And I think whatever Jessica is planning, you are going to be caught in the crossfire." Cameron stepped closer, and despite everything, Riley's heart stuttered at his proximity. "I told you to stay away from me, and I meant it. But I also will not let you become collateral damage in whatever game the Hammonds are playing." "Why would you protect me?" Riley asked quietly. "After what I did?" Cameron's expression was complex, layered with emotions Riley could not entirely read. "Because despite everything, despite the deception and the anger and the absolute mess of this situation, I keep remembering how you looked at me Friday night. Not with pity. Not with judgment, just with genuine compassion, and I keep wondering what would have happened if you had been you from the start. If we had met honestly." The confession hung between them, dangerous and electric. "Cameron," Riley began, but he held up a hand. "Do not say anything that will make this more complicated." He stepped back, rebuilding the walls between them. "Just be careful around Jessica. Trust nothing she says. And if you notice anything strange, anything that feels off, you tell me immediately. Understood?" Riley nodded, not trusting her voice. Cameron turned to leave, then paused. "For what it is worth, Riley Thompson, I believe you when you say you were trying to help Friday night. Your methods were questionable, but your intentions were good. That has to count for something." And he was gone, leaving Riley alone in the parking garage with more questions than answers, and a heart that beat entirely too fast whenever. Cameron Blake was near. The game begins 2 weeks past in a strange limbo. Riley threw herself into work, determined to prove she belonged at Blake Technologies through sheer competence. But Jessica's presence hung over the office like a storm cloud, beautiful and ominous. The consulting arrangement had evolved into something more permanent. Jessica occupied an office on the 3rd floor, close enough to Cameron's that their proximity seemed intentional. She attended meetings, offered input on campaigns, and generally behaved like someone with far more authority than a temporary consultant should possess. And she watched Riley constantly. "It is getting creepy," Natalie said over coffee one Saturday morning. Riley had finally confessed the entire situation to her roommate, needing someone to help her process the increasingly surreal circumstances. Like restraining order level creepy. "She has not actually done anything," Riley protested weakly. "Just stares sometimes. Makes pointed comments about honesty and authenticity in marketing. Asks lots of questions about my background." "She knows," Natalie said flatly. "I do not know how, but she definitely knows you were the one in that suite with Cameron." Riley had reached the same conclusion, but hearing it said aloud made it real. "So what do I do? Honestly, I think you need to have a real conversation with Cameron. This whole avoiding each other thing is not working when you are both clearly obsessed with pretending you are not obsessed with each other." "I am not obsessed with him," Riley said automatically. Natalie gave her a look that could melt steel. Girl, you have checked your phone 14 times in the last hour hoping for another parking garage text. You are wearing makeup to work now. You changed your coffee order to match his. You are so obsessed it is painful to watch. Riley opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Natalie was right. Over the past 2 weeks, Riley had become hyper-aware of Cameron's presence in the building. She knew his schedule, recognized his footsteps in the hallway, felt her pulse quicken whenever he entered a room. This was not just guilt or residual emotion from their unusual first encounter. This was something deeper, more dangerous, entirely inappropriate given their circumstances. Forced proximity Monday brought an unwelcome surprise. Patricia Vance called Riley into a conference room where Cameron, Jessica, and David Hammond himself were waiting. David Hammond looked exactly like his reputation, silver-haired and sharpened, wearing power like a second skin. He smiled as Riley entered, but the expression held no warmth. "Miss Thompson," he greeted her. "Please, sit. We have a proposition for you." Riley sat, acutely aware of Cameron's tension beside her. He had not looked at her once since she entered. "The Hammond Industries rebrand is our highest priority," David continued. "It will set the tone for how the market perceives our merger with Blake Technologies. We need someone young, creative, hungry. Patricia speaks highly of your work." "Thank you," Riley said carefully, sensing a trap she could not yet see. "We would like you to lead the campaign," Jessica said, her smile predatory. "Report directly to Cameron and myself. It is a wonderful opportunity for someone at your level." There it was, the trap. Working directly with both Cameron and Jessica, caught between them in whatever psychological warfare they were waging. "I am honored," Riley said, because refusing would raise questions she could not answer. "When would this start?" "Immediately," David said. "In fact, we have arranged a retreat for the core team. This weekend, my estate in Lake Geneva. 3 days of intensive planning and strategy development." Riley's stomach dropped. 3 days trapped with Cameron, Jessica, and the man who orchestrated this entire situation. "I do not think Miss Thompson's current projects allow for that time commitment," Cameron said suddenly. It was the first time he had spoken. Perhaps someone more senior would be better suited. "Nonsense." David waved away the objection. "Patricia assures me Riley's workload can be redistributed. This project needs fresh perspective, not corporate thinking." His gaze sharpened. "Unless there is some other reason you object to Miss Thompson's involvement, Cameron." The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken meaning. Riley watched. Cameron's jaw tightened, watched him weigh his options, and realize he had none. "No other reason," he said finally. "Welcome to the team, Miss Thompson." Jessica's smile widened. "This is going to be so much fun." Truth in the darkness, the Hammond estate was less a house and more a statement of wealth, sprawling across 10 acres of Lake Geneva waterfront. Riley arrived Friday evening to find a structure that combined old money elegance with modern luxury, all soaring windows and tasteful excess. She was shown to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment, told dinner would be served at 7, and left alone with her spinning thoughts. The knock on her door came at 6:45. Riley opened it to find Cameron in jeans and a casual shirt, looking more approachable than she had seen him since that first night. "We need to talk," he said, without preamble. "Before dinner, before whatever game David has planned." "Really talk." Riley let him in, leaving the door open for propriety's sake. Cameron paced to the window, staring out at the lake. "David knows," he said finally. "About Friday night. Dot the details, but enough to know something happened between us. Jessica does too." "How?" Riley asked, though she had suspected as much. "The bartender at Skyline. He is on David's payroll. Reports back on everything that happens in that building. He saw us together, saw us leave together," told David, who told Jessica. Cameron turned to face her. "They are using you to get to me, Riley. This whole campaign, the retreat. It is all about creating a situation where I am forced to interact with you while Jessica watches. But why?" Riley struggled to understand. "If Jessica is your ex, if she broke up with you over the merger, why does she care what you do now?" Cameron's laugh was hollow. "Because I did not just choose the merger over her. I chose it over a future together. We were engaged, Riley. Had been for 6 months. The wedding was planned for June. The revelation hit Riley like cold water. Engaged. Cameron had been going to marry Jessica, had been planning a life with her, and she had called it off over a business decision. She wants you back, Riley said slowly, understanding clicking into place. She wants to prove she still owns me, Cameron corrected. David thinks I am weak because I let emotions influence business decisions. He has spent the past 2 months proving he has more power than I do, maneuvering pieces on a board I did not even realize we were playing on. And you, Riley Thompson? You are his newest piece. Riley sat down heavily on the bed. So what do we do? We. Cameron shook his head. There is no we. I am going to tell David tonight that I am removing you from the project. You will go home tomorrow, stay away from this entire mess, and let Jessica win? Riley found herself standing, anger rising. Let her manipulate you back into a relationship you clearly do not want, all because I happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You do not understand what these people are capable of, Cameron said urgently. David Hammond does not lose, ever, and if he has decided to use you to control me, he will not stop until he gets what he wants. Maybe I am tired of powerful people deciding what happens to me without my input, Elise said, surprising herself with her vehemence. Maybe I want a say in this, Cameron stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Why? Why would you put yourself in the middle of this? You do not owe me anything. Yes. You should be running as fast as possible in the opposite direction. Riley took a breath, preparing to say something she could not take back. Because that night in the suite, before I knew who you were, or what was at stake, I saw someone real. Someone who cared so deeply about doing the right thing that tearing his heart out felt preferable to compromising his integrity. And I have spent 2 weeks watching you wear a mask, pretending to be the cold CEO everyone expects. But I know the truth, Cameron. I know who you really are. When walls come down, the air between them changed, charged with possibilities neither had allowed themselves to consider. Cameron crossed the space, separating them in 3 strides. You do not know me, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You know a version of me that existed for 3 hours under extremely unusual circumstances? I know you hate black coffee, but drink it anyway because someone once told you, successful people do not waste time with cream and sugar, Riley said. I know you call your mother every Sunday even though those conversations stress you out. I know you keep a photo of your first employee tucked in your wallet, and sometimes when you think no one is watching, you look at it and remember why you started this company. Cameron's eyes widened. How do you know all that? Because I pay attention, Riley said simply. These past 2 weeks I have watched you, not because I was trying to spy or manipulate, but because I could not help it. You are fascinating, Cameron Blake. Complicated and brilliant and so determined to carry everything alone that you have forgotten what it feels like to let someone help. He was close enough now that Riley could feel the heat radiating from him, close enough to see the war being waged in his expression, logic fighting something much more primal. This is a terrible idea, Cameron said, but he did not move away. You work for me. Fiancé is downstairs plotting ways to destroy you. Her father is a human shark who eats people like us for breakfast. Every rational part of my brain is screaming at me to walk away right now. Then why are you still standing here? Riley whispered. Cameron's hand lifted, cupping her face with the same gentleness he had shown that first night. Because apparently, I am very bad at doing the rational thing where you were concerned. The kiss, when it came, was nothing like Riley had imagined. Not soft or tentative, but fierce and desperate. Weeks of tension and denied attraction, finally given permission to exist. Cameron kissed her like she was air, and he had been drowning. And Riley responded with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt to pull him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. We are going to regret this, he said. Probably, Riley agreed. Do you care? Not even a little bit. He kissed her again, and Riley let herself fall into the moment, knowing that downstairs Jessica and David were probably planning their next move. Knowing that Monday would bring consequences neither of them was prepared to face. But right now, in this room, with rain starting to fall outside and Cameron's arms around her, none of that mattered. The confrontation dinner was an exercise in psychological warfare. The dining room seated 12 but felt intimate with only 5 people: David and Jessica, Cameron and Riley, and Patricia Vance serving as a buffer and witness. Jessica wore red. Strategic and stunning, positioned herself directly across from Cameron. She asked pointed questions about Riley's background, her education, her career aspirations, each inquiry designed to highlight the gulf in experience and status between them. "It is so refreshing to see someone so young leading such an important project," Jessica said with a smile sharp enough to cut. "Though I imagine the learning curve must be steep. Perhaps Cameron should assign a mentor, someone with more experience navigating complex corporate relationships?" "I find Miss Thompson more than capable," Cameron said coolly. Under the table, his hand found Riley's, a secret connection hidden from view. David watched the exchange with clear amusement. Now Jessica raises a good point, though. This campaign will require navigating sensitive political waters. One wrong step could damage relationships we have spent months building, which is why I trust Riley's instincts, Cameron said. Fresh perspective, unencumbered by old conflicts and baggage. The emphasis on the last word made Jessica's smile falter. Baggage. Is that what you call 3 years of partnership and engagement? How clinical of you, darling. "We are not engaged anymore," Cameron said flatly. "And we are not partners. We're business associates managing a merger. Nothing more. Is that what you tell yourself?" Jessica leaned forward, her expression shifting from playful to predatory. "That you can just erase what we had? That some random girl you met in a bar can replace 3 years of history?